Let's finish up with pay transparency,
Sure,
conducting
sure.
pay audits.
Right.
Welcome back to the program. Our members love you. They
Thank
love
you.
working with you. I know you got a big program coming up on June 20th here
20th.
at
Mhm.
8:30. It'll be simulcast and live in person, so you still have a chance to join that program should you like. But let's talk a little bit about pay equity audits.
Okay.
First, just tell us what is a pay equity audit for us?
Well, basically, and they're really interrelated now, because what's happened is that because of pay transparency, especially in the states where it's now required or will be required, now you have, of course, our clients and our human resource professionals have concerns that, well, now everybody will know the ranges, which I think they should have known anyway over years. But now that we're becoming more transparent, there's a concern that employees are going to start comparing their pay with other employees. And of course, that will then raise an issue. Why am I paid what I'm paid? And if we haven't already been communicating that, which I'm finding a number of organizations have not. And so that leads to the whole issue of, do we have any potential issues in pay equity? Pay equity meaning looking at how we are paying individuals and how we determine their compensation, if it's based on performance or experience or other factors other than who they are, meaning their race, their sex, and the like, and their age. So people are starting to now having to look at that to say, have we been paying fairly, or have we had some inadvertent discrimination potential issues because managers make decisions, human decisions. We don't have Monique making pay decisions.
We don't need Monique joining us. Be careful there.
I'm sorry. Yeah, if I say it 3 times, she'll appear. I know.
Yeah.
Like Beetlejuice. Yeah, right. So basically, the concern is, now that we're going to become more transparent, we need to start looking at where people are paid within those ranges to be sure it makes sense, right, to some degree, and that we can go back and look at the decisions that were being made by our managers and then discover if we have to do any correction as that becomes more transparent.
So, all right. So break that down into, for an example, a lot of it is we have to go back and look. What are the categories? What do we look for, or what are we evaluating when we do an audit?
Sure. So of course, the very obvious one is male-female comparison in compensation. And again, there are many ways, and there are a lot of legitimate reasons why there will be differences. However, and I'll give you an example, we just recently had a client that 80% of their workforce is female, but the average pay of the females in that organization is 68% of that of the males. And what we found was we had a glass ceiling. We had all the males were predominantly in management and above. Females were in support or professional jobs that were not management. And basically, they continue to hire males in their management roles without providing opportunity for promotion of the females. So that's the first one we look at, because that's very obvious when you start looking at that. And then, of course, you have the issue of race. So when we look at, looking at our white workforce versus, African American, Hispanic, and the like, are there any differences or anything that shows up where we can see a pattern within the pay system that, all of our white males and our white males under 40 are all being paid at a much higher level than other groups. And age is the third one that we generally look at as well, because there is that again, inadvertent process where as a worker becomes older, they start slowing down in terms of how their pay will advance, and that the younger workers tend to start seeing more promotions and more moves. And again, if that can be tied to legitimate standards of how we make that decision, that's fine. But our job initially is to kind of provide the picture. Right.
Do we look at military status, disability, any of those types of things as well?
Yes. Yeah? And let me make with Bert here, let me make a comment that when we do this, we are generally not doing this directly with our clients. generally that this goes through their labor attorney. So when someone says, look, we have a concern that we may have some pay equity issues, and we can see that when we do compensation on the surface, we can kind of look and say, you know what, this doesn't look right. There's something going on. We immediately tell our clients to notify their labor attorney, who in turn contacts us. And then we become contracted via the labor attorney to do the more detailed study and provide a report. And that's very important.
Bert, why does that happen, Bert?
Yeah, the reason for that is to try to cloak the audit with attorney-client privilege. That this is something that the attorney is instructing be done at the company, and that way, if things are found, if there's litigation down the road, that hopefully we could shield the audit with attorney-client privilege.
Okay.
So it doesn't always work, but that is the theory behind it.
Gives you a chance. And if someone didn't have an in-house attorney on staff, from that standpoint, they could contact you, Bert, at Ogletree and say, hey, we would like to do this. And you have resources, whether you use AIM or other resources that you have available to help provide that audit.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
that's right. In fact, we refer any AIM member who does not have a labor attorney that they can turn to when they request an audit. We always turn them back to AIM to use your resources. And that's very important.
Absolutely. All right. So, Mikey, there's one thought, I guess, when it comes into this, and I'd like to get you and Bert's opinion. So you do this audit, and here's the conversation that we don't always want to have in public. But we're going to do it today just a little bit, because I think it's very sensitive, but it's very real. And that is, and I'm just bringing up a conversation. I'm not sharing an opinion here. You have a male and a female worker, and the female worker is a mother who has responsibilities that the female or that the male worker doesn't have. Maybe the male worker doesn't have children. And the female worker needs to stop working at some point and go home and be a mother. Thank goodness. And we need mothers, and we need that for the betterment of society. But the male worker doesn't have to put the job on pause and works longer hours or more so on the weekend. And by outcome, the organization believes that the male worker produces more, and therefore wants to give more of an increase to the male worker or pay the male worker higher in the range for more performance. I'd just like to get Bert and your thought on that, because I do know I have had those conversations, and it's delicate, and they're always in quiet conversations.
Sure. And let me just jump. I'll just make a quick comment, and Bert, I'll let you fill in. Basically, one of the things we find, you mentioned performance, but there's also the issue of experience in the position. So let's say that I'm a female worker who I have a break in my service, so to speak. I decided to stay home for a while, and now I want to come back into the workplace, into this position. So the male, of course, continued working, so they're probably more than likely going to move further into the range. And the female is coming in and has to catch up because they did have a break in experience, which is possible. And that can happen. On performance, one of the biggest issues, and Bert, I'm sure you know this, you've got to be very sure that how you're defining those expectations and how you're measuring, which after my 40 years of looking at it, I can tell you performance management systems are just deadly. I mean, because it's a human event. You've got a manager, a person making a judgment on another person. And that's where we
don't say person 3 times.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no. And we have to check for bias, right? Because if I'm a older male military manager, and I'm going to be real, kind of stereotypical, who doesn't think that the female can even do that type of a job very well, I may have already a bias as I'm doing. So human resources has to be very, very careful in auditing those performance reviews as well, to be sure they are not also tied to bias. So all of those things come together in that one scenario in terms of, are they performing? Is it an experience issue? Are they fulfilling the essential functions and the like? Because if they are, then it shouldn't matter that they were home for a while and they've come back to the workplace.